All right. Well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. As always, we look forward to these times of the month when we get to have another Heart in the Ice connection. So Sunniva, Sorby, and expedition partner Hilde Strom, they have been in Svalbard for several months now, living in a remote trapper's cabin called Bamsebu. In total, they're going to spend 9 months there, becoming the first women to do so solo to overwinter over that period of time. Along the way, they're taking part in a whole bunch of different citizen science projects. We're going to learn about a couple of those today. And each month we connect with them for live events, having different experts from around the world join in with us. So this month's theme has been technology. We've been learning all about technology that they're using for survival, for communication, for these citizen science projects. So Hilde and Sunniva, we're so excited to have you joining us with a group of live classrooms from across North America. And we're looking forward to doing a little bit of catching up.
Well, thank you, Joe, and thank you so much, Andy, from Iridium for joining us, and Kalina, and all of you students and teachers out there that are on the call. It's really exciting for us to be chatting with you today.
All right, awesome. So Sunniva, I can.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is. Okay, Joe. So, hi everyone. My name is Hilde, and just a short update on how we're doing here in this very little old trapper's cabin. It's a gale outside and 10 degrees, and it's really cold in here. It's not winter insulated, this hut. We're doing fine, and we don't have much.
All right, so we're gonna lose them. That's what that static sound means. So as we're today, it can be tricky sometimes when you're connecting from really remote locations. And if you could hear in the background, if you listen really closely when they sign back in with us, there is a crazy storm going on. So probably thick clouds, lots of wind. You're going to hear that whistling when they reconnect with us. So I'm going to give them a minute to do that. They're usually able to do that fairly quickly. And while we wait for that reconnection, I have a little video that I'm going to share that they sent me. So you guys are going to get a little picture of the conditions that they're going through right now. Darkness, 24 hours, the weather, the extreme weather, and you're going to get to see a really important piece of this technology that makes this call possible today. So actually, they're just back right now. So maybe we're going to hold on to the video.
We're back.
All right, we gotcha. We can hear the storm whistling in the background.
Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, we are really remote, and we're in a small trapper's cabin. I don't know how much you heard, but it's really windy here now, so it's maybe minus 30 in a wind chill, and this hut is not winter insulated, so it's kind of cold inside here too. But we're doing fine, and we have some technology with us, Iridium Extreme, and the cool stuff with that lately, because I've been using this app for quite many years, but now the communication has been just great with this technology, and we actually became the first rocket citizen scientist for NASA 3 days ago. We actually we saw a rocket launch for scientists looking for what's happening with the cusp aurora. That's a daylight, northern light or aurora that's appear and that you can see only on Svalbard. So we were really lucky to be a part of that. And they text us on the Iridium phone. So we got messages ahead of the launch, and were able to take a picture of that. So that's really great. And I just want to say, just to give all of you a little snapshot of what it looks like here. So we have this box that looks like a big suitcase, and it's gray, and it's called a pelican case, and it's all watertight. It sits outside our cabin, and if you open it up, inside there is a big round, like a dish, and it's tailless. It's a mission link, and it's basically our satellite. And so we leave that box outside, and we have all these cables that run into a hole in the cabin that's sort of a natural ventilation. And we're able to run a phone line inside the cabin and then sit right now with all of you on the phone using this MCD mission link that's a tailless unit, and then we connect to Iridium satellite. And it's, I have to, I mean, Hilde and I sit here all the time and we go, I can't believe we're actually able to connect with the outside world, because outside of connectivity with using the satellite, the only way anybody can connect with us is if they came to visit. And the only way anybody could come to visit is with a helicopter right now, because we're completely frozen in all around us. And we're 140 kilometers away from the nearest neighbor. So technology for us and communication is absolutely it's imperative for our survival, and for us to be able to connect with all of you in the classrooms and share, from a climate change perspective, what's happening here. Because aside from the NASA stuff that we're doing, we're also observing the wildlife. We have a lot of polar bears living around here. We're able to document how many we see, where they come in and out of, and also some of their unique hunting habits. And I just we'll end with Hilde just telling briefly a story about what we observed just a little while ago with the polar bears.
Yeah, polar bears are struggling a little bit because it's less ice than usual, so they try to find other sources for food. So we had a couple of polar bears coming close to our hut, and they're looking for food, obviously. So it's very important that we store our food very safe and away from the polar bear in order for them not to get anything, because then they will stay here, and that's not their natural food. But what we actually saw, that was the polar bear that had hunted down a reindeer, and we came walking straight at it, and I didn't see it. It's really dark now. It's completely dark, and this was a few weeks ago, and we just saw something running away, and understood that it was a big polar bear, and it had hunted down and killed a reindeer. So that might be the way for a polar bear to survive in the future, in order to, because there's no ice, and on top of the ice there are seals, and that's their normal food. But now they start to hunt on land.
So we'll pass it back to you, Joe.
All right, excellent. Well, what I want to do before we meet Andrew is I want to share my screen, and I want the students to get a feel for the kind of weather you're experiencing right now, and then they're going to get a look at that mission link. So give me just 1 second to do a little screen share here, and you guys can get a little peek at what's going on right now. So let's get that up. Let's go full screen, and here we go. Let's come back from that screen share. Extreme weather, long periods of darkness. It's quite an adventure that you have in Svalbard right now.
Well, I'll say it's really, I almost have no words. It feels very vulnerable to be where we are right now in total darkness, with our only tether being, what we're speaking to all of you on. But it's also really comforting to know that all of this works, and that we have people behind us like Iridium. And I just have to shout out there, because we're working with big companies out there that have launched satellites in orbit to make connectivity possible for all of us. And that's part of our mission, is to engage this global community in something that's really close to all of our hearts, which is our changing climate. So what we're doing right now feels like the absolute right thing for both of us to be doing at this time in all of our lives. So,
and it's really important for us to engage you kids, because you are our future, and it's important that you guys go out there and stay curious and engage and be citizen scientists. And look what Greta Thunberg just received. The name of the year. Fantastic. Time Person of the Year. That's fantastic. So it's I'm sure there's a lot of Greta Thunbergs listening to us now. So yeah, we're sharing on you guys.
All right. Let's take a little moment and meet Andrew Morin. So Andrew is the Director of Service Product Management at Iridium Communications. Iridium makes voice and data communication possible from anywhere in the world. It's the reason why we're able to have this event today. And Andrew, that mission link looks like one heck of a system. It looks like it can go through a lot and keep on ticking to make things like this possible, this kind of communication from the Arctic.
Oh no, we're happy to be able to enable some of this. I mean, they're putting it through tests that we could never even imagine when we're developing it. But no, it's a privilege to be part of the, helping in all these environmental studies.
All right, awesome. Well, Andrew, I know you have a little presentation for us, so the students can get a little feel for kind of what goes on to make this technology possible. So we're excited to check it out.
Okay, give me 1 second here. Let me share my screen and then get the PowerPoint up. Can you guys see the presentation?
All right, looks good.
All right, very good. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Andy. I work for Iridium, and we work to make communication possible anywhere on Earth. What Iridium does is we manage a constellation of satellites. We provide communication services, both voice, data, and we also provide a lot of terminals, and you see them here. They range from everything from a simple phone, a handset, to broadband terminals like the Mission Link that we were talking about, to other embedded, some of those little computer-looking things or little modules that can be put into sensors and other unmanned probes that can provide more information back to a center point. So what makes this all possible is the Iridium constellation. And here's a picture of the constellation. We have 66 mission satellites in place right now, communicating and covering the entire planet. As you see here, each satellite can beam down to a particular section of the Earth, and they're moving very, very fast. So think of it almost like like cell phones are when you're driving down the highway. But in this case, it's the satellites that are moving instead of the car. As they move across the Earth, your communications will get handed off from one to the other. But what it does is it gives you that complete global coverage. Again, we have 66 operational satellites. We keep 9 spares in space, just in case one has a problem. We can move another one into place. And we keep a handful of them, so we have 6 on the ground, ready to go up if we have additional problems beyond that. That way we can maintain that critical link so that we don't have people in Svalbard losing communications if something critical happens. Okay, a little bit more about the Iridium network. We are what's called LEO. That's low Earth orbit. By comparison to most satellites, we're actually pretty close to Earth. We're hovering at most of our satellites are under 1,000 miles from Earth. And to put that in perspective against some of the traditional satellites you may think of, like TV satellites and things like that, that's a tiny fraction because some of those are up over 20,000 miles. So as you see here in the picture, we're very close. We also have a couple of other differences. As you saw from the previous one, our satellites are zipping around in north-south orbits, and they're constantly moving. Now, all satellites are moving, but the geosynchronous satellites that are more common, they stay stationary compared to where you are on Earth. Now, they're moving, but they're moving at the same rate that the Earth is orbiting. So if the satellite is right above you, it'll stay right above you, and it'll appear that it's not moving. So that's another difference with us. One of the other differences that allows Iridium to work in such harsh climates is we use something called L-band. The RF spectrum is broken up into various bands, and each of those bands have different properties. You can think of that like the light spectrum is broken up into colors. There's lots of shades of blue, but all blue have certain characteristics. Now, L-band has the advantage of, penetrating the atmosphere very easily. So it's not affected by rain and snow as much as other parts of the spectrum are. There's pros and cons. Some of the other spectrums like C and Ka and Ku are bigger, so they could offer a little bit more data, but they'll be more susceptible to some of those environmental factors. So at Iridium, we always try to maintain the critical communications link, and that's why we selected to stay in the L-band. And next, what's critical for us, and one of our differentiators, is we cover the entire globe. Here you can see that only 15% of the Earth is covered by terrestrial networks. That's GSM, 3G, 4G, now with new 5G. And even the other satellite operators in a geosynchronous orbit, they can't cover the far reaches of the poles. But with Iridium, we really don't need a coverage map because we cover the entire Earth. So no matter where you are, you could be in the middle of the Pacific, you could be at the North Pole, you could be at the South Pole. Iridium can get you covered and get you some of that communication that's critical. Then another unique property of the Iridium network is in many of the satellites, you communicate to the satellite and the satellite directly communicates with the ground. So that means there has to be an Earth station underneath the satellite. Now you saw our network, you saw all those satellites buzzing around. That would be very challenging. We'd have to have ground stations all over the Earth. So when we designed our satellites, we have them talk to each other. So they basically create a mesh network amongst all those 66 operational satellites that are talking with each other. So you may make a phone call and it'll go up to one satellite and it may bounce through 2 or 3 others before it gets to the ground, and we put it on the ground network so that your call can be completed. Now that all happens seamlessly, you don't even see it happen. And in reality, when you're on a call, like this call that we're having right now, they're probably going to switch their satellite 5 or 6 times. And that whole route will change in between them as well. And we strive to keep all those calls connected and keep the communication flowing. Then here's a close-up look of the terminal we were just talking about, the mission link. That's what it looks like. That's what's in the box that we're just showing you. And it's a great new terminal. It just came out earlier this year. It takes advantage of the new satellites. Iridium just refreshed that constellation of satellites. We finished our refresh this year. So they're all new satellites within the past 2 years. And with that, we created some new products. And this is one of the new products that leverages all the capabilities of the new satellites. Not only can it handle voice, it can do 3 voice lines. So you can have multiple phone calls going on simultaneously, but it also supports data. So you can get out onto the internet up to 352 kilobits per second. Now that's pretty good for the polars. Now I know a lot of our houses have faster internet speeds than that, but going through the satellite network and staying on the L-band, that's pretty good speed for the middle of nowhere. In addition, this is a bunch of the capabilities of the Mission Link product. They made it so that they built Wi-Fi right into it. Now, in this case, you have to put it in a case and put it outside. So you probably have to wire a connection. But if that was in a desert area, you can connect directly to the terminal because it has a Wi-Fi signal. It also has the ability to, if you're going to mount it on a vehicle or move it around, it can connect to the 4G networks around the world and then switch back and forth. So when you're in one of those, the 15% of the world that has terrestrial coverage, you could leverage that and then switch over to Iridium when you don't have that coverage. Here are a few other products, just very, very good ones that are used in some of these research projects as well. We have the Iridium Extreme there. That's a traditional handset. It's very good on battery life. And again, that can work anywhere on Earth. To the left is the Iridium Go. That's a little device. It's like a Wi-Fi hotspot. It's about the size of a cell phone. And you could connect your phone or your tablet to it and send messages or make voice calls with your normal Android or iOS phone. It's pretty good. It's very low in its bandwidth, so it can only do like messaging, but it's a great add-on. And again, it'll work anywhere on Earth. Now, next, the environmentalism. Iridium takes environmentalism very seriously as some of our corporate objectives. We want to make sure that we, as a company, we want to restrict our carbon footprint and reduce that. But we also enable the technology to help support the wildlife protections and like the research that's happening right now. And You know, as you see there, we're part of an ocean cleanup program. We do the polar research programs. We do wildlife protection solutions. And some of these are really amazing programs. Just like you were seeing there, the polar bears running away. We have other solutions throughout the world. Some of them are counting lions in Central Africa, and research all over the world. And here's another example, and this is where Iridium can really help expedite the science. I mean, we're just enablers. I mean, it's really the scientists who are doing all the hard work. But what we hope to do is help to enable it and make it quicker. Because if you had like here, this is a sensor buoy. If you had to go out and collect the data off that sensor buoy every time you wanted to evaluate that, and and then pull them all together, because you'll have many buoys, that just takes time, and your data is going to be delayed. So what we can do is we can provide a small, like one of those modules we showed earlier, can go in there, so it can take its sensor readings, like in this case, salinity, temperature, and things like that, could transmit it back on a regular basis. So you can have a fleet of sensors, and you're constantly getting data, which will help expedite the science for all of the studies that are going on, whether it be wildlife conservation, environmentalism, or things like that. I think that's what we have. Let's see if we have any questions.
All right, awesome. So Andrew, I'll get you to come back to us. If you hit the red stop share at the top, there we go. We gotcha. And you know what? It just amazes me. I think we take for granted the connectivity we have, because, you know, not too long ago, you need like a whole truck to carry satellite gear to be able to make connections like this possible. So it's pretty cool that you can get little units now that you can use to connect your cell phone to, you know, pretty much anywhere on the planet. You can connect from Svalbard with a mission. Like, it's pretty cool. All right. Well, Hilde and Sunniva, we are going to jump to a little bit of Q&A action. So I want to give a shout out to the classrooms who are tuning in via YouTube. Don't forget, you can send us in some questions there. And then we've got a great group of classrooms from Canada and the US who are joining us live on camera right now. So boys and girls, fair game. If you have any questions about the technology and Iridium for Andrew, as well as any questions about the citizen science projects or life living in Bamsebu for Hilde and Sunniva. So here we go. Let's start off. Mr. Leonard's got a group of high schoolers hanging out with us in Svalbard Lake, Ontario. Let me get that microphone turned on. There they are. How we doing, boys and girls?
Good.
All right, who's up?
I've been appointed, I guess. A question for the researchers. Tell us how you're doing the research about the Northern Lights. We're interested in hearing just a little bit more about how that research is done. Is it done in the hut, or do you have to venture outside with instruments to do that?
I think I heard most of your question. Your question had to do with the Northern Lights, and you're interested in hearing a little bit more of the research around that. Is that correct?
You got it.
Okay, cool. I'll jump in there with this. So we have connected with a woman by the name of Liz, and she runs something. It's a citizen science project called Aurora Saurus. And there are people all around the world, especially in northern Canada and in northern Europe, that are out there. They love the polar night, and they're out there with a sheet of paper and a camera taking time-lapse photography, still photos, and documenting the colors of the aurora, the shapes of the aurora, and what time they're noticed. So we're doing the same thing. So we're citizen science for the aurora part. We also, the whole NASA rocket science thing came about through Liz, because she discovered that Norway was going to be launching, NASA through some agencies in Norway were launching 65-foot-long rockets into the atmosphere with special gases inside the rockets that would explode, non-intrusive, and those gases would then get mixed in with the upper atmosphere. Don't ask me to get into too much technicality with that, because I'll lose myself, and I only know enough to describe this. And up there, then these gases interact with the aurora to amplify the colors and the direction that the aurora is going because of the stellar wind. And so we were able to take time-lapse photography for the rocket launch. And we had literally on our Iridium Extreme, not kidding, a text message came in and it said launching in 7 minutes. And when that text came in, we dressed up like firemen and ran outside, and it's not easy. It was probably minus 19 when this happened. So, and lots of wind. So we'll go out there, and of course we're in the dark. We don't have any artificial light, no headlamp, and we're just aware of the polar bears all the time. So we're super excited to take part in that part of the NASA science environment. So, well, extreme, if you will, but I hope that answers your question.
All right, I think so. Awesome. Let's take another trip to another group. Let's go to Mrs. Woodcock's group. They're joining us from Fort Collins in the US. Looks like some 5th graders. Let's get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, 5th graders? All right, who's got a question?
So what is the average temperature out there?
Well, that has changed the last 10, 15 years. So during the winter, the average temperature is around 12 minus, so it's not that very cold. We are affected by the Gulf Stream, but now it has been quite cold actually. So I think the average temperature me and Sunniva have had the last month is at least 10, maybe 15 minus, and it's getting more and more ice, which is good news for the polar bears that we have around. So, but the wind chill. Yesterday we had more than minus 30 degrees from the wind chill. So it's. But to answer your question, I would say now we have around maybe 15 minus, and average during the winter is 12. But it could easily be like 30 minus, but then it's usually no wind.
All right.
And what's the average temperature inside the cabin?
Oh, I want to speak to that one because Hilde likes it cold in here, and this Canadian, Norwegian-born Canadian, me, Sunniva, when we wake up in the morning, it's about 5 or 6 degrees inside the cabin, and it takes about 2 hours to, put the wood in the stove and have the wood-burning stove heated up in here. So I am really happy I've got some wool blankets and a down comforter to keep me warm. And usually I'll just sit with a laptop and do some work from underneath the covers because it's pretty chilly. It's not like we have a little dial we can turn up and heat the place or keep it heated. So definitely feel the cold.
All right. So Andrew, that got me curious about the mission link. Do you know what kind of that it can handle, or are Hilde and Sunniva kind of the guinea pigs finding out just what the unit can do?
No, I mean the unit was tested. I don't have the spec sheet in front of me, but I think it was tested down to -60. So it has been tested because we knew it would, in particular, this one would be used for some of these research programs. So the Thales, the maker of the unit, has a chamber in Maryland that they put it in and get it really, really cold. I'd have to look it up the exact spec, but they have tested it in preparation for some very chilly environments. And they also tested to what's amazing is the same unit can work in the middle of the desert because they've tested it up to pretty high temperatures as well.
All right. So I'm going to grab a question off of YouTube. And Andrew, I think this is a good one for you to take. They're wondering about the satellite system itself, the constellation of satellites. What kind of maintenance do you have to do from the ground to keep that up and running?
Yeah, that's a good question because that's one of the attributes of being a LEO, where we're zipping around, is that we constantly have to make minor tweaks. We have an operations center in Leesburg, Virginia, that does nothing but monitor the telemetry of the satellites, keeps them in position, and we obviously there's one of the most precious resources for a satellite network is fuel. So you want to do as little firing and maneuvering as possible. So this team has to manage it 24/7 and keep an eye on anything And the other thing is there's also in the maintenance, we have to be becoming an increasing issue in the satellite community, where you have to maneuver around various debris that's come from, you know, accidents that have happened in space.
All right, absolutely. Lots of leftover materials from launches and different projects over the years. So I imagine that's a big issue to have to kind of keep an eye on.
Yep, there's an international agency that does nothing but that, and they track everything bigger than about a dime.
Wow. All right. Let's see. I want to give a quick shout out to Mrs. Places Group. They're joining us from Miami, Florida in the call. But they don't have their microphone up, but they did just send me a question via the chat. So I'm sure it's much warmer there for them, but they're wondering, Hilde and Sunniva, a little bit about your food. Where did the food come from and what are you eating?
Well, we eat canned food, dry food. We actually also are allowed to hunt a reindeer once a year on Svalbard. So we hunted a reindeer before we went out here. This is a national park, so here it's not allowed. We're not allowed to hunt here. So we eat, and we eat dried fruit. And I think we're really, we have been very careful by trying to get as much food as possible that's organic and less waste than plastic. So we have been very thoughtful around that before we left. So, and I think we live quite healthy and eat well.
And just that great question about how cold it is in the cabin. It's a bit of a challenge for us because if it gets we have a lot of food inside the cabin underneath my bed, underneath Hilde's bed, underneath the couch, and we have to rotate eggs and things like that because it can easily freeze inside the cabin as well. So we're constantly looking at whatever fresh fruit and vegetables we have left to make sure it doesn't spoil. And if it's close to spoiling, then we get in the kitchen and we make something out of it and freeze it before it gets spoiled. But food is kind of like the highlight of the day, too, because we both like to cook and we both like to eat.
And we also brought a lot of chocolate and a lot of chips, because that's important.
All right. It's good to have those treats and those snacks. So in Guelph, Ontario, we have grade 7s hanging out with Mrs. Ray. So I'm going to get their microphone turned on here. How are we doing, grade 7s?
Yeah.
All right. Who's got a question?
How do you get the satellites to space? Did you hear that? How do you get the satellites to space?
Oh, good question. Good question. We work with a company called SpaceX. For the most recent constellation, SpaceX we worked with them to do all of our launches. We put all of our satellites went up on Falcon 9 rockets. We were able to put 10 satellites on each one of the rockets. So when a rocket would go up, it would go up, and the videos are on YouTube. So if you see them, it's actually very amazing. I was fortunate enough to get out to watch a couple of the launches. And what they do is they take they launch a rocket out of Vandenberg, California. All of ours were launched out of California because we go north-south, not equatorial. So they launch heading south. And what they do is once the rocket gets to a certain altitude, it drops off the first stage. And then as it gets a little bit higher, it opens up and starts releasing the satellites one at a time until all 10 have been released. What's a great video there is SpaceX has a mechanism for recovering those rockets to reduce the cost of putting satellites in space. And watching them land the satellites is a very impressive feat because they don't use parachutes. They let the main stage of the rocket fall to Earth only using fins. And then just before it hits a drone ship, they blast the rockets to slow it down so that it lands on a drone ship. So it's, if you have time, great YouTube videos about all the Iridium launches.
All right, absolutely. Check those out. It's pretty wild. I'm just thinking back to one that I saw with a double landing of the rocket boosters at the same time. It's incredible. It's pretty wild. Yeah, definitely check those out if you have some time today. All right, Mrs. Miller's class. We've got some students hanging out in Cambridge, Ontario. Let me get that microphone turned on.
Good question.
How are we doing, Cambridge?
We're good.
All right.
How are you? ask your question.
How long have you yeah
Go ahead.
how long did it be up there?
How long have you been up there?
Yeah.
Up where, in space or in the Arctic?
Okay.
In the Arctic.
Maybe ask one more time slowly.
How?
How long had you been up there?
All right, so it sounds like that might be.
How long have we been up in the Arctic?
Yep.
Yep, we've been here almost 3 months now, and we've been in total darkness for many weeks. And I just wanted to mention just Andy's great description about how in the world you get satellites in the orbit, that it's so dark here when we go outside, not only to see the northern lights, we watch satellites all the time. I mean, they're like, if you go somewhere, all of you guys and gals, somewhere where it's really dark and just look up in the night sky, and they look like fast little moving, I don't know, maybe Andy can describe it more, but it's quite interesting to see the satellites up there. I don't know how many there are in total, but we have some more dark days to be able to sort that out. And we're here until May of 2020.
Yeah, you can't see them everywhere. I mean, you guys are, that's one of the fortunate things about being that remote is you get the ability to see all of that. It's hard if you live near a city. You don't even have to be in a city. The light pollution, is what they call it, from the cities and the streets that emit the lights, make it so that you can't see that everywhere on Earth. But it is fun when you get out into either on the ocean or into a rural area to see all of these satellites. And if you really look at the sky, you see the LEOs going north-south, and then you see the geosynchronous going east-west, and you see them all dance through the sky. It's very interesting to see.
All right, Mr. Bickle's class, Livingston, New Jersey. Let me get your microphone turned on. There it is. All right, so actually Mrs. Corino's class hanging out with Mr. Bickle today. So how are we doing, New Jersey?
This is for the researchers. What's the most important trait of a modern day explorer?
Oh, great question. Oh, and I think we're gonna have to put a little pause on that because I'm just looking and I don't see Hilde and Sunniva, so they might have to reconnect. So they should be back with us in just a minute or two. But Andrew, why don't you answer that question? Because you get to work. Iridium provides products for all sorts of explorers and scientists all over the world. So what do you think are some traits for a modern day explorer?
I think one of the critical traits is just to have an innate sense of curiosity. It's not easy to do what they're doing. I mean, they have to really have a passion for the research they're doing to live in that environment. As you heard them describe, I mean, it is cold, and it's cold inside, not just outside. It's not like they have a nice warm, palatial hut that they go to. It's tough. And that's true for the research around the world that we see. I mean, if it's the polar ones, it's very cold. We do some research with other groups in Central Africa, where it's the opposite. It's very hot. And trudging through all that to get science completed is hard. So again, it's that you need to have a curiosity and a passion to keep driving through it, because we need all of us need those answers. So greatly appreciate all their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to put you a little bit on the spot, Andrew, and ask you about, can you think of a specific maybe expedition or event where connectivity with Iridium, it just hit you like, wow, this is amazing?
Well, I mean, a few of them have hit me, but one of the ones was there was some research being done about poaching in Central Africa. And I didn't realize what a problem it was. Just, again, I was not exposed to the news enough. And then when I realized how critical just some simple photography was in keeping in getting that in check. Somebody had made a device which blended in. It was really kind of concealed. It looked like a rock. And what it did is when something walked by and triggered it, it would take pictures. So it was both able to look at the animals, but what it did is it caught poachers in process. And that information was critical to stopping the poaching and obviously for that, it was about the wildlife preservation. So, you know, and that really resonated with me, that we can do some good here with some really, some simple ideas. I mean, we're just providing a module. It's the researcher that came up with the creativity to put it inside something that looked like a rock and set up a trigger to take a picture and, analyze it so that it didn't send every picture back. But no, it's great to be part of these efforts.
All right, so we are definitely grateful for the ability to communicate from remote areas. We host ocean rowers, we host scientists in the Arctic and Antarctic on ships, we host people on tops of volcanoes and middle of deserts. So it's pretty exciting that we're able to do things like this. So as we wait for Hilde and Sunniva to join us again to get that final question in, I want to give a shout out to the classrooms. If there's any class that has another question that Andrew could answer, give me a wave and I'll make sure we come and visit your classroom while we wait for one more connection. So I think I see some waving in Mrs. Woodcox's class. So I'm going to turn your mic on, see if you guys have a question for Andrew. Here we go.
Why do you launch? Why do you want to ensure that you can communicate around the world? Like, what's the point?
Good question. Because the terrestrial networks that cover that 15% cover the majority of conversations, data, everything you do. That's where the majority of them. We provide that global coverage because there is a lot of critical activity that happens outside of that range. Some of our biggest customers, it's not in the research field, are ships traveling on the seas. These vessels go through long swaths in the Pacific and the Atlantic where there's no communication. And it's critical for them to be able to get weather data so that they could optimize their routes and avoid big storms and do things like that. Stay in touch with home. Large shipping fleets need to report on back and forth. Maritime is one of our biggest customers. In addition, we do a lot of work on planes. So as your plane is flying over the Atlantic or the poles or things like that, they need to stay in touch. And there are, because of our technology, they no longer are reliant on terrestrial only communication. So what that's done is that's made it more effective flying routes. You see a lot more planes in commercial aviation going over the poles, for example, because they can stay in touch. They used to avoid that because they always have to stay in communication for safety reasons. So those are some of the more commercial aspects. And then other parts of it are the pure science of it. When Prince Harry went down to the South Pole, he had an Iridium phone, and that was great to see. I mean, just to stay connected while you do all of this research. So there's both commercial activities, and that Iridium needs that to make money, but there's also a lot of this research capability where we can do good. Another huge advantage of this is when we go into relief. Like all of the hurricanes we had that hit the islands here over the past few years. When a hurricane hits, all of the terrestrial infrastructure is just devastated. And what happens is we deploy a lot of Iridium phones there so that the people who are going in there to help fix that infrastructure are using our network until they could get that infrastructure back up and running. So that's another critical aspect for why we need to cover, every inch of the world.
All right. Absolutely. Such important reasons. And from a scientist, from an explorer's perspective, if you're in the field for 1, 2, 3 months, being able to call home, being able to send messages back and forth is pretty darn exciting too. All right. So I've got Hilde and Sunniva. They called me on the satellite phone. So I've got them here back with us. And so Hilde and Sunniva, we just had a question for you about what you're doing up there. What do you think it takes to be a modern day explorer? What are important traits or characteristics?
Oh, wow, that's a big question and a good question. We actually were talking about this a little bit the other day. Everything that Hilde and I are doing up here in terms of all the science projects, so we're technically citizen scientists because neither one of us have a science degree, but we are collecting data for the researchers, and everything that we're doing with science is being built off of all of the early explorers and the early researchers and all the questions they asked. So right now. A super important thing to be an explorer, an adventurer, a researcher is curiosity. You have to be willing to step on the edge of who you are and your own comfort zone to ask the questions and find the answers. And I think that's what we're doing up here for certain. And I have to tell you, I'm not 20 anymore. I'm close, but both Hilde and I are just a little over 50, and both of us have over 50 years of experience in the Arctic and the Antarctic. And that means, what's in our backpack. We have to understand what it takes to stay warm, what kind of food we need to keep ourselves going. We need to know who we are as people on a good day and a bad day, on day 1, day 20, day 50, day 80. We have to be willing to, be humble, and we have to be willing to communicate with each other. And we have to be really able to understand the worst case scenarios and be prepared. So, who we are and what we're doing is something that I think that anybody on this call could do. If you did like Abe Lincoln, his great quote, if I had 5 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. And I'd like to think that we've been spending our lives up until this point sharpening our axe. And right now, we're kind of chopping down the tree as a metaphor as it relates to us standing on the front of climate change that all of us are so concerned about. So hope that answers the question.
All right, absolutely. So we're going to squeeze one more question in. Mrs. Corino, I can see some students have been waiting the entire time to squeeze in one more question. So we're going to turn your mic on. Let's get that one last question from you guys.
How fast does a satellite travel?
Our satellites are traveling at about roughly 22 times the speed of sound.
Oh, wow.
So they're moving very, very fast. And, in the course of about 10 minutes, one will go overhead and then pass. So if you're connected, you're pretty much, if you connect at the beginning to the end, it's about, you're going to be about 10, 15 minutes on one satellite, and then you're off to the next.
Okay.
All right, that's a great question. Very cool. So listen, I want to give a huge shout out to our classrooms who joined us on YouTube. Thanks for sending in some questions. A huge shout out to our classrooms who are on camera joining us live today. Thank you so much. Andrew, thank you so much for your expertise and teaching us a little bit about just what it takes to make communication possible globally. It's amazing that we can blanket the whole planet that way. And then Hilde and Sunniva, thank you so much for another awesome event from Bamsebu. All right, very cool. Well, the last thing we're going to do today is I am going to turn all the microphones on, boys and girls. Let's get really loud. A big goodbye and thank you for everybody. So here we go, boys and girls, nice and loud. Much for hanging out with us today. Hilde and Sunniva, it's so great to have you joining us live today as well for another awesome event.
So much, Joe. And thank you. Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Kalina and Andy, and all you kids from Canada and the US. And Joe, you are the best.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your weeks. Enjoy your weekend. We look forward to January when we'll be making some connections about weather, and we'll have a really special guest joining us. So everybody enjoy your holiday season. Thanks so much for a great batch of Hearts in the Ice events, and we're looking forward to the new year. All right. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.